Hello, everyone, and welcome to Community Bookstore's virtual event series. My name is Hal Levinka, and I'm the event director at the bookstore, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to be collaborating again with our friends at NYRB and to welcome Anakana Schofield here to present her new book, Bina, a Novel in Warnings, in conversation with Elif Batuman. While the pandemic has taken a toll across all of our lives, virtual programs like the one you're about to see have become bright spots in our days. And I want to give a huge thanks to the two authors tonight for taking the time to join us. So to some housekeeping, you should be able to see and hear our presenters, but they cannot see or hear you. So if you have any questions, please click on the Q&A button here at the bottom of the screen to submit them. We'll try to get through as many of those as we can at the end of the program. There's also a chat button here where I'll be posting a link to tonight's book. Very important. Please click it and check it out. It is a book that we really, really love and in fact has gone out to many of you with our subscription service. So a caveat for tonight's event and for all virtual events, we're all at the mercy of our home internet connections and server loads. So please bear with any technical issues that might arise. We will try to solve them quickly. And finally, we've scheduled a whole host of spring programming. So head over to our website and sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date. Next Thursday, we're thrilled to welcome Patricia Lockwood to present her newest novel, No One Is Talking About This, in conversation with playwright Heidi Schreck. Again, this is up on our website now, so head over there and register as soon as we wrap up. So now a little about tonight's guests, and we will get started. Anakana Schofield is an award-winning Irish-Canadian writer of fiction, essays, and literary criticism. Her previous novels are Malarkey and Martin John. The UK edition of Bina was shortlisted for the Goldsmiths Prize 2020. She lives in Vancouver, British Columbia. And Elif Batuman is the author of two books, a memoir, The Possessed, and a novel, The Idiot, which was a finalist for the 2018 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. She's a staff writer for The New Yorker. So the stage is yours.
Thank you so much for that great introduction. Hello, is it Anakana? I think I've been saying it wrong.
Anakana, but you can just say AK if it's too much, just say AK.
Like Anakana.
Sorry, I forgot to put my lipstick on.
Oh yeah, no, it looks great.
Yeah, I had to match you. Cheers.
I'm so excited for this. So I think first you're going to read for us a little bit.
Yeah. Can they hear us?
I think they can hear us. We would hear from them if they didn't hear us.
And can they see us? They can see us now, right?
They can see us, right? There's a 107 there, and that's them. And this is
107.
Yeah.
Where's the 107?
It's down there. Look, they're all replying to you.
Oh, right. Sorry, I haven't done very many Zoom events.
Oh,
I'm the only person, right, who hasn't. Hello. Oh, here. Oh, look. Hello. Sorry, I get excited on Zoom because I haven't been on it very much.
Yeah, well,
I know everybody else isn't it. Well, nobody else has been off it, but I've managed to not be on it very much. Yeah. So yeah, will I read a bit? Yeah.
Yeah. Super excited.
Okay. Oh, look, there's Dan Welsh. Sorry, he's in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Sorry, I'm really bad at Zoom. I got to stop.
This is all cool.
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to read. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. This is Bina. This is not Bina. That's the wrong cover. Hang on. Oh, God. This is Bina. I got the wrong book. Damn. Sorry about that. Here's Bina. This is Bina. This is the new Bina from the New York.
That's amazing. Books. I love the cover. Yeah. Did you have input on the cover?
Well, I mean, I just said it's a banger. That was the input, right? They sent me the picture. Yeah. I love this picture. It's so utilitarian.
It's a warning.
It's a warning. Warnings. And then I said, it's a banger. And then that was pretty much it.
Geniuses. They know their job.
Sorry about showing that foreign edition. Sorry about that. I'll just hide it down here. Okay, yeah, so Bina, Novel in Warnings. I'm going to read two pieces for you. Now, the thing about Bina is, she's fairly witty. So I'm just going to read some funny bits, and then maybe a bit later on, I'll read more of a sad bit, but they'll hopefully be short. So the thing you need to know about Bina is that she's been lumbered with this man, Eddie, and finally, after 10 years, she's managing to get rid of him. But this part, she's just really sort of talking, well, you'll hear. There has to be a plan. I'll have to kill the cat if I'm to go. That's a pity. For the best. Nice cat though, except when it piddled all over the place early on, including on my new pillow. Because Eddie locked the poor crater in my bedroom. Them's the sort of stupid things Eddies do. I didn't want it to get out, he said. You locked him in my bedroom for 2 days and gave him no food because you didn't want him to get out. He didn't get out, though, he said. He couldn't get out. He was locked in. That cat's not dead, said he, as if there was some fear the cat would be dead if it lived a normal cat's life. It's very hard to get run over when you're locked inside my bedroom. Most cats die. Most cats die. Most cats let out die. They die on the road. And he believes it. He holds fast, plain, dry, seasoned, oblivious, smothered with fungal oblivion. He could live, die, and rise again, entirely oblivious, that man. Every time the thought revisits me that I should have left him in that ditch, I'm thinking it as I write this to you. I'm warning you not to lift men out of ditches. And don't trust the common declaration. All he needs is a bang on the head. Eddie received a big bang on the head when he landed off my motorbike in my ditch, and there is no evidence of it improving him. I don't know how I didn't take the cat and brain him with it, except the poor creature had suffered enough. Since Eddie's gone, I've put items in his bed to remind myself he's gone. But I had to throw out the mattress, the pillows and sheets he'd slept on for years because he was filthy any time he lay down on them. You could never wash the smell of him away. I've one room stinks of cat's piss and another of Eddie. I often wonder at the women who give birth to awful young fellas like Eddie. I think there's a case to be heard for shoving the likes of Eddie back up and starting all over again. I believe in abortion since I met Eddie. It's only a shame you can't abort a 40-year-old. So there's a little introduction to Bina. And I read another little bit from the back of the book. As you're going to discover as we talk about this book. So Bina takes to the beds, like a lot of us at the moment who are taken to the beds. And she listens to a lot of radio. So it's just a bit of a funny part about her listening to the radio. And I'm not quite sure why I'm choosing to read this because it might be a bit incomprehensible, but there's something about it that I think sums up an element of a something that I can't coherently articulate at this point, but you'll get it. I lay in my bed listening. The radio told me who had died and where I could find them reposing, and the exact time they'd cease reposing and go into the ground. Another voice complained about the lack of public toilets in our towns. Lack of toilets causes distress for many, she said. Parking charges should cover public toilets. Another called a phone to say there should be no parking charges. It was a disgrace and he'd be happy to use his own toilet. Thanks, if parking were free. We don't know what real charity means in this country, came another caller, unrelated to the public toilets. The conversation was disrupted by, went to a river with my fishing rod, but I couldn't even find a spot to cast my line because of all the bushes. Confused fella phoning that there were too many bushes in this country. I needed the right tractor for the right job, or so an advert sang out stridently to me. We're no longer living in a democracy. We are living in a dictatorship, gave me another 20 minutes of opining about smoking. I was taking it all in, just allowing it to go into my ears and swish about my brain unimpeded. I wasn't going to be thinking any more important thoughts. I would let others occupy my thinking vessel. They could have it. It was empty. It was at this point I realized people have no problems at all. They have nothing bothering them if bushes and if bushes and fishing are the worst of it. A woman phoned the radio on Friday and said people were having their sex against the gable of her house, and it was interrupting her night's sleep. I want them to go elsewhere, she said. They're even out there in the rain, yowling like a bag of cats. And what had she tried to deter them with? A bucket of soapy water, she said. And did it work? It did not, she said. There's even more of them out there now. Are they reproducing? Somebody texted in. Another caller suggested a hose, a fire hose. Soapy water was too good for them. She needed a water cannon, he espoused. I admired the woman with the soapy bucket. They only gave her first name and the area where she lived. I wrote down her name in case I was ever passing it. I revised my thoughts. I was wrong. Some people were being plain tormented. Now.
Yay. Everyone would be clapping if we could. They probably are all clapping in their houses. It's so great to hear you read that in your voice. And I was thinking, how did that voice come about? So I know Bina is a character in Malarkey. When did you know that she got her own book, and did that voice, was it already there, or how did you find it, and where did Eddie come from, and just where did this whole thing come from?
So Bina was I keep using the word residual, but there was nothing residual about her. In my first novel, Malarkey, she was the main character, our woman's best friend. And she had this one line that stayed with me. When the main character has an unwinding and is in the psychiatric ward, Bina goes to visit her. And Bina is very useful and she's very helpful to her. And she gives her this warning. She says, don't let them put anything in your mouth, and don't let them put anything up the other end either. And I think it was that. I thought that line was very sensible, within that context. I mean, I'm not recommending anybody in hospital, adhere to that. And I loved this idea of warnings. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if, like, at the end of your life, you left like a booklet of warnings behind, and then the people coming along, you could look at the booklet and you could go, oh yeah, and you could just sort of save yourself a lot of grief. Now, obviously, I was kind of hoping secretly that would take off as a movement, and unfortunately, it hasn't. They're just like all these insurrectionists and useless things, but there aren't any.
Well, it's so close to advice. It's so close to how to, and yet it's so different. Warnings. I was thinking about the comparison between warnings and advice, and also between, like, I don't know. This is something I was thinking about with advice anyway. In a way, it's so crazy to think that you can tell someone what to do based on your life, because your life is so different from someone else's life. But somehow a warning takes that up to a whole other level. I don't know. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, no, it's true. And so in order to, I'll just go back because I've just realized I didn't answer the question, and then I'll go forward. No, then I'll go forward because I want to talk about warnings, because that was so intrinsic to the form of the book and how to make that form, because out of that form really came those voices, I guess. So that was Bina. And then I thought I would write a novel about Bina next, because of a review that I read in a newspaper in Ireland, where I believe the reviewer said she thought Bina would make a great character for a novel of her own. Now, apparently some radio host at some university who interviewed me said, well, I can't find that review. That woman never said that. So, the novelist, right? You just read things and you just make it up. And obviously it was clearly a message from the beyond. That journalist didn't say that. But anyway, that journalist did say something about Bina. And so thanks to that journalist, which is why we need to have newspapers and journalists, I decided I would write a novel about Bina, but I ended up writing a novel about Martin John. And so Martin John snuck in there. And then after I was done with Martin John, then I went to Bina. And so your point about advice and warnings is so brilliant. And of course, I probably never probably occurred to me until now, which is what's so great about writing books and talking to people about books and readers. Like you learn about what you've written. I don't know if you have this experience. You know, you write books.
I learn nothing ever, but that's different.
That's not true. That's not true. You're very wise. You're very, very wise. But you know, like when you're writing books, the question I have for you is, do you know what you're up to?
Mm-hmm.
You do?
Oh, do I? Oh, I was just sort of nodding in an encouraging way. I mean, you do and you don't. In a way, you're telling them, and in a way, they're telling you. In a way, you're down in the bottom of your hole. But what do you think? Do you think you don't? I think you know what you're doing quite well.
I kind of feel like in my case, I feel like I often don't know what I'm doing, and most of the time, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm just existing in this spin cycle of despair about what I'm not doing. And then most of the time I feel like, well, I haven't written anything. Like that did happen actually with Bina.
I feel that constantly.
Yeah.
I wake up every day feeling like I just haven't written anything.
Haven't written anything. Even the 3 books that I've written.
Yeah. Just, especially them.
There's like a strange, I don't know if amnesia is the right word, but where you don't remember ever having written anything. And that is really problematic when you're writing a book. And I mean, because you like that, you wake up and 6 months later, you wake up and you think, Jesus, fuck, I haven't written anything. And then you go and you look, and if you're really disorganized like me, you can't find anything on your computer, and you legitimately don't think you've written anything. And then eventually you find some chunk somewhere and you go, oh, look, there's 96 pages.
Have you written the same thing many times? Because I've done that. And then I'll do search and find like 4 versions of the same thing because I completely forget that I've written it already. But yeah,
it's even worse. If it's even worse than that, I'm like the next level of disasters. I actually lose whole chunks of my book. And then when the book is published and I'm reading, and so then I'm doing events and reading from the book, I just think, where's that bit? Where's that? And this was really bad in my first novel. Sorry, this earphone is falling out of my ears, which proves that Apple earpods don't stay in everybody's ears. The advert is, this ear is, anyway. I was like, where's that bit about George Bush gone? And to this day, I've never found that bit about George Bush, but I know that I write a whole scene with George Bush in it. Now, probably right at this moment, America's pretty glad that I didn't put that scene in. But so I lose like chunks of my books around the place. So eventually, I guess it's going to work out really well when I'm dead. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's going to be great. It's important to keep that. I actually wanted to talk about assisted suicide at some point. I was going to talk about that later after we talk about other stuff. Should we just go right into that? Well, maybe that can be. I also want to ask about humor also.
Okay, cool. But I got to talk about warnings, right?
Oh yeah, warnings.
Talk about language. Yeah.
Warnings and language.
This is great because I think your brain and my brain are very similar in this regard. So this is good.
It's a delight.
So warnings. So then I thought, okay, the language of warnings. Oh God, because for me, when I write a book, I've got to find the form. I need a form. If I don't have a form, I don't have a way in. Or when I say a form, I mean the form, whatever this book needs to be. And so I spent months, thinking, oh God. And so then I started looking at the language of warnings. I started looking at the backs of tablet bottles, chemical warning. I looked up warnings and I started to think, that's really interesting. It's ominous, it's curt, it's always boxy. And so that was part of it. And then the idea of like this unrolling and like it would unroll like a scroll, like she would list these warnings. So that was a huge part of it. And then, it's really always like a constant project to like, how can I find the language for this book? So that's sort of where that comes from. So it's interesting because I'm often asked about voice, voice, which is great. Because I don't know, personally, I think if you don't have a voice in your book, what have you got? Language is the means, but I guess you can have all they're all different versions of voice, but like if you're writing about humans, maybe it might be kind of handy to have a bit of voice. I mean, you know, there are no prescriptions for these things. So
there
I'm always
are
curious.
warnings, and the warning is if you don't have a voice, you're fucked unless you're writing about bricks.
Do you know what? There's an argument to be made for writing about bricks.
There is, because you can do it without a voice.
Also, just in terms of the pandemic, right? We need new forms. And bricks, you know, they're
also boxy.
You know, they're
like
boxy. There's a sense of stasis. You know, they don't always cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the thing about warnings. Voice warnings. So that was Bina weirdly, yeah, God. You know what's so fascinating? Well, it's not fascinating to anybody, possibly except me, because I lead a really like very low-key life. This book, you know, was published in 2019 and it was finished in 2018, and now it's 2021. And so one of the beautiful things about nobody wanting to publish my book, except God bless them, the New York Review of Books. Yay. Is that the book has aged with the world. So it's really strange now because you now find like strange new, you know, unexpected new content.
When did you read the audiobook? Was that recently or had you done it already?
I read the audiobook. Well, it was weird because I read actually all my audiobooks, but I read them
I did
like
that too, because nobody wanted them at first. So I did them at a delay. So then you have this experience of reading your own stuff years later. It's in that little box.
In that box. And into the ear of a very young man. And the first novel has, you know, some fairly like, yeah. I just kept thinking, how did I come up with this? Who came up with this? What is this? This is mortifying.
You're in an absurd play all of a sudden. Yeah.
But it was pretty fun because I was in this studio and I felt a bit like Celine Dion. That was the first day because it had windows. And then because it takes a while to record them, then gradually I got demoted and eventually I was in a studio, didn't have any windows. And that was kind of better, really, you know. Yeah, sorry. What was the other question?
So it was over a period of time. Well, you were talking about how your books changed over the period of time that you've been promoting them and publishing them.
Well, it was weird with Martin John as well, because, you know, I published Martin John in 2015 and then Me Too and Time's Up followed about 1 to 2 years later. Mm-hmm. But luckily, the French only published Martin John last February, right at the height. And because, you know, it's a bit slower in Europe, right at the height of their, you know, banished on pork or whatever it was called. So that worked out. But so there's a weird, and even now, I mean, all day I've just been feeling so sad after, I mean, just thinking, because so the wonderful Katie Waldman, God bless her, you know, wrote this review today in the New Yorker, and she posed this question about whether, I don't remember the question because I'm 49 and I read it this morning, but the question was something to do with whether the feminist marketplace cares about this old lady. And then all day I've just been steeped in questions of, okay, we have this long-term care crisis, we have this horrible COVID, and I just all day been thinking about all these Binas, you know, and maybe some Berts, because you know, it's not just women who are just so alone in this. I mean, we're all alone to some extent, especially single people. That's why I bought my boyfriend, the Fern, here, in case there's any rowdies. Yeah, it's good to see him. He's reliable. You know, I've just been thinking all day about this. And then I was thinking about how the book has you know, aged into the pandemic. And this book is about a woman who takes to the bed. But obviously I was ahead of the pandemic by about a month because I listened to virology podcasts and I'm fixated on infectious diseases, but I wasn't that far ahead of the pandemic. Like I didn't actually know that everybody would be taking to the bed. Like this wasn't, you know.
So what's it like going through this kind of literalization of something that you explored metaphorically in a book 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Has that, were you right?
It's deeply saddening. It's deeply saddening. You know, I was thinking about this the other day. I feel like we're like humanity, like we're obviously always broken, but we're now broken in a fresh, whole new way that we don't know the dimensions of, because we don't know what's coming after it. And that's what I find it so saddening in a way, because of course, when I was writing Bina, that's the great thing about fiction. You can posit things on the page, you give people status on that page that they don't enjoy in life or that they can't enjoy in life. And so, you know, with Bina, you know, she was like this kind of whatever combine harvester on acid, plowing down the field, you know, not giving a damn and loving her own little world in a way. And yet I know that this pandemic is so hard for people. I mean, just the isolation, it's just, you know, it's just heartbreaking. I mean, that's probably a bit of a light word, but you know what I mean? So I'm finding it sad, and it ties in very strongly actually, with medical assistance in dying, because one of the things, so after I wrote the first draft of the book, I was plagued with all these questions about people dying alone. Really has basically nothing to do with the book, but that's kind of how I am.
I see how you could go from,
you know, I do get kind of perturbed by things. You know, I was really perturbed about this place called Love's in Oklahoma yesterday. I wanted to know if it was a hardware shop. It's completely irrelevant. It's not. It's a truck stop. It's not a cake shop. It was on the basketball players t-shirt. So I had to know what's it about. And now I'm filled with thoughts about Oklahoma. Anyway, back to Bina. What was I saying?
Assisted suicide.
Oh yeah, assisted dying. Medical assistance in dying. End of life choice is what we call it. So I was like, oh, everybody's born with a witness. It's not possible to be born without a witness unless, unfortunately, like your mother dies in childbirth, but still, there's still a witness. Now, sometimes you're alone, but I was really upset about the idea that people could die alone without a witness. And I was just thinking, nobody should die alone because nobody's born alone. And I was trying to come up with a theory for how could it be that we make sure that nobody ever dies alone. And so I know this is bonkers, but this is what novelists do in their spare time when they're not being novelists. So I wrote to Dying with Dignity to find out, because I was thinking in my head, well, maybe you could just have people with people all the time, you know, and then when they died, there'd be someone there. Anyway, obviously it's not practical. So I wrote to, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm a practical person, but I'm not practical imaginatively. I mean, imaginatively, I obviously try to invent things that are possible. Anyway, I was just filled with this idea, oh God, nobody should die alone. And
well, then there's a logistical problem. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, then there's a logistical, because I kind of thought, well, maybe we could have like a useful army rather than a military, where we could have armies of people who, I don't know. And I was thinking, oh God, why do you think people who are dying, you know, want people there? That's just my projection. Anyway, I wrote these emails to find out if they had like a volunteering for people who don't want to die alone. You know, like, is there any way that you have volunteers? Like, I don't know what I was asking, but this lovely person wrote me back, Dr. Sue. And so she said, well, these are very interesting questions that you're asking and blah, blah, blah. And then she asked me at a certain point in the conversation, she asked, would you be interested in volunteering as a witness? And I didn't know what that was. And so all it is we go to the hospitals and the care homes and houses. Now, of course, unfortunately, it's mostly online. And we witness the forums. So when people apply, because we have medical assistance in dying federally in Canada. So when people apply, they need 2 witnesses. And so we're just like volunteer notaries. And so anyway, but one of the things I've learned from doing that, and that was something I did like after I finished the book, was that we don't realize how many people have nobody at end of life. And I've been kind of shocked by that. And so that has been, strangely, like I thought about that before the pandemic. And I think that has really obviously ratcheted up, because now there are so many people who have died. And it isn't that they didn't have anybody, it was that there wasn't a possibility for people to be physically present with them.
Yeah, I just weren't allowed.
I just find that just gushing. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I used to be obsessed by this, and I was trying to write a magazine story about these people called the Hemlock Society, where they will come to your house in a friendly group, just kind of like you described, and give you helium until you die. And that way you can choose the time when you die. And this was something that you could join. And then first you would be the person who goes to all the houses. And then eventually, when you wanted to do it, they would come for you. And I thought this was the most humane thing that I'd ever heard in my life. And I was trying to pitch this as a magazine story. And the thing that I kept getting told was like, this is super depressing. Nobody wants to hear about it. Then they were like, oh, you have to find someone who wants to die and then who's going to let you follow them so you can like profile that person. So then I found that person. I found someone with a brain tumor who was like, yeah, at some point I'm going to want to do it, but I don't want to do it now. But then the story got killed. But anyway, the thing that I was thinking is that these stories kind of get marginalized as being depressing. And we even do it to ourselves. And we're like, oh, I'm such a weirdo. I'm interested in this depressing thing that nobody even cares about. But what you're describing is actually something quite utopian, like the impulse that you have to want to go and volunteer and be with people. And even, I mean, in this book is so filled with human spirit and companionship. And there's also like a kind of practicality in seeing where it's not there that can feel very cruel, but is also based on this loving vision of how different everything could be and like the possibilities, which actually made me think of female friendship, which made me wonder if this is a segue to your other reading.
Yeah.
Or is it time to talk more about well, it just seems like, why can't we choose the time when we're going to die? I just think about this constantly. It seems so brutal that you have to just sit there waiting until your time runs out, even whether you want to be there or not. I just think about, I don't know. I used to volunteer because I was trying to learn to speak Russian for a long time and nobody would talk to me because I was really bad. So they said you have to go to an old people's home and talk to the very old people who can't go anywhere. So I did that, and I could talk my heart out, and then I'd be saying, so what do you think? And then I remember this woman saying to me like, you seem like a really smart person. Maybe you can explain to me this. I'm 106 years old. I've buried my daughter and my granddaughter. Why am I still alive? And I don't know why.
Well, it's especially fascinating. I mean, like I say, since I think it was 2014 was when medical assistance in dying was legalized here. And I mean, it's very controlled, but I mean, I think 80% of Canadians support it. And so I just feel, obviously,
it's different in America.
We don't have a medical assistance in dying or end of life or choice in Ireland.
It's illegal here, in New York.
Yeah, well, there are some states, I think, where
some states
permitted,
it's okay.
but it's definitely not. And then even when you have that as a healthcare service, your access to that is so dependent on where you live, whether your local, it's getting better and better. But I think that's a really interesting image of this 106-year-old woman. Now, we live in a city here in Vancouver where we've had this, absolute, we've had 3 public health crises, which are just the opioid crisis. We've lost thousands and thousands of people, and none of those people want to be dead. Like none of those people wanted to be dead. And yet we have this really strange contradiction where we'll say, no, Auntie Margot, you're 93, despite the fact that you were a harpsichord player or whatever, who had like a lot of responsibility and made a lot of choices in your life. You're going to stay there until we say you can go. And I find that contradiction really strange. We won't save anybody, or we won't help somebody, because it's not about saving people. It's about giving people access to safe drugs that aren't going to kill them. We'll deprive somebody. Oh yeah. Anyway, but it has changed here, and I am hopeful that it will change. And the other thing is that the more and more people that I talk to about this topic, the less distressed people are in their grief afterwards when they've had like a parent where it's been made, we call it made here, versus non-made. The person often feels just so much better in their grief. They're not as distressed because they've been present, they've been able to gather. And that's one of the experiences I've had when I've gone into these places. Like on the one hand, it's been sort of startling to me, the epidemic of loneliness and the epidemic of people who have nobody, who mostly, to my surprise, I don't know why I'm surprised about this, but men in that sort of 50, 60 range are often alone. It actually sort of softened me a little towards men, because you just realize, wow, this is, you know, me and this other volunteer, all you've got. Like, this is terrible.
I want to see Bina yelling at you now and being like, don't be soft. That's how they get in. That's how
they get in. But then the other side of it is, it's so beautiful when, you know, there's a gang of people around a bed and it's a happy thing. Nobody's depressed and sad. And I mean, I've had very profound experiences, like the man who asked me to turn on Ozzy Osbourne. He said, turn on Ozzy Osbourne. You signed it for me. He said, turn on Ozzy Osbourne. Mama, I'm coming home. And I feel okay sharing that story, because I feel like that man that asked me to turn on Ozzy Osbourne would not be uncomfortable with me. Because I thought, what a great exit. You know, I mean, he was obviously in horrible pain. And but that does tie in very nicely to the really, truly what's at the, like, you know, the lava of this book, which is female friendship. And I mean, friendship, period. I particularly chose to explore it as women, because also that is something that I've experienced, and I'm blessed. I think it's the best you can achieve in life, in my opinion. So yeah, that was very important to this book, like how also, again, this kind of conundrum that, you know, like, Bina does not support Phil making that choice. Bina's in favor of the right to choose. Bina can leave her kitchen where she can't solve problems. She cannot deal with Eddie. She can go into another kitchen and she can help that person and release that person's suffering. And I love that contradiction of humanity. And then the idea as well that this notion that, okay, I believe it in the right to choose. I'll help everybody, but not you, Elif, because you're my friend, and I don't want. And you're my friend, and I kind of love this other notion that it's like, I don't know. I've kind of come up with this vague idea that maybe one of the only ways that we can persuade people who we want to keep on living, who don't want to keep on living, who aren't terminally ill or 106. You know, like people who are depressed or whatever, because that's another thing that kind of fueled this book, because, you know, I have lost some friends to suicide, and I just really struggle to accept that and understand that. And well, I understand it. I've just find it so devastating. And so I wonder if, like, in a way with Bina and Phil, she's sort of like, no, I need you to keep living to bear witness, like, to how terrible things are. Almost a bit Beckettian, right? Like, let's, and the, I mean, at the risk of sounding kind of grim and melancholic, you know, I'm really interested in social class. I'm not convinced, and I mean, this ties in with mental health. Like, I'm not convinced that, you know, like, things sometimes get better for people by millimeters and centimeters. Things don't often get better for people by meters. And often in narrative and in literature, that has been the sort of historical arc. And that arc is fallacious if you're writing about the poor. And I mean, obviously, you know, people are going to come back and say, well, push back on that and say, well, that's nonsense because. Yeah, but I don't know about that. I mean, let's look at things like the pandemic, you know, it hasn't been overwhelmingly excellent for the poor, you know. Those aren't the people who have access. So I'm always kind of interested in trying to maybe posit difficult questions and then possibly contradict. So saying, okay, what about autonomy and end-of-life choice? And then bringing in the point of view, yeah, but not you. You know, autonomy for everybody, but not you. Or I don't know.
I mean, the whole thing that I'm thinking of is just kind of like, not believe women, but like believe people. If someone tells you that they want to be alive, believe them. And if they don't, then believe them. Just like help everyone do the thing that they say that they want to do.
And in essence, she says that if you tell me you have had enough, I will believe you. She does say that in the book. And maybe in a way that also, again, goes back to this, you know, it's like the intersection of two roads or something, which is friendship, where, you know, you love your friends, and sometimes your friends may do or say things that just for whatever reason drive you nuts. But that's the beauty of friendship. Like if that person's your partner, you have to contemplate breaking up with them. You know, you discover whatever. Like that's the inclement weather. That's the Arctic outflow warning. But with friendship, it's like you can maybe a space for more compassion or something, or empathy.
That's really, because it sort of doesn't reflect on you also. It's almost like if it's your partner, you have to get on your moral high ground and be like, I officially disavow this person. Whereas if it's your friend, you have some more maneuvering room.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that friendship's not uncomplicated, right? Like it can be very tricky. It's humans. And this is my argument always. Like, you know, why would humans are very complicated. Life is very complicated and it's very confusing. And so I don't understand why we aren't, like, I don't understand people say, oh, this book is so confusing. It's like, well, okay, but am I on another planet here? Because this is pretty damn confusing. And it's not, there's nothing happening here. This is like, you know, central station of absolutely nothing happening at any given time except oatmeal being eaten. I go to the COVID lab and I work now and
Wait, what is the COVID lab? Is that a metaphor or is that a reality?
No, I have a job. I work at the COVID lab.
Oh, what does that entail?
Oh, it's not exciting. I always worry when I say that I work at the COVID lab that people might think like I'm like mixing a cauldron and and throwing things. I'm not. And all I'm doing is opening hundreds of thousands of COVID samples and inputting all the information and the data, trying to read doctors' names and trying to understand things like send this to public health nurse. People are, I mean, it's great from a literary point of view. I just love the language in it.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I can't wait for like 3 years from now when that comes out as a novel and something that I haven't even thought of yet. Novel and instructions.
Well, and then the other thing I do is I have to label hundreds of COVID samples and then I put them in these racks. And that is so interesting to me as a writer, because of course I'd never seen, because I'm not a scientist. I'd never seen a rack. So if there's any scientists watching, I really admire, I've come up close to your tools.
There are scientists watching. I draw their attention to your magnificent garment that has the periodic table on it.
And I'm wearing the periodic table. It's really cool though when people say, are you a scientist? And I say, I was so bad at science in school. I wasn't even allowed to take science, right? Like there was
You're a scientist of the human condition.
Well, I'm totally fixated on like abstract. I have a very abstract relationship to science. Like it's not rational. I
thought it was a metaphor when you would write in emails, oh, it's been a long day at the COVID lab. I was like, well, you know what? It has been a long day in the COVID lab. I thought that was just what all of our lives have become now.
No, I'm working at the COVID lab in November. I keep giving the explanation that all my events were cancelled. And then I remember I actually didn't have any events, but I've been saying things like, well, all my events were cancelled. But actually, the truth of the matter is I only really had 3 events and one of them was in August. So I've got to stop saying all my events were cancelled. And that's why I went to work at the COVID lab. No, I went to work at the COVID lab for 2 reasons. One, I was like swiftly running out of cash. And 2, more importantly, maybe on a par, I wanted to do something that would actually contribute to stopping this bloody virus. And I wasn't afraid, listen to me, don't I sound heroic and butch here? But I really wasn't afraid. And I think the reason I wasn't afraid was because I'm just like, I don't know why I wasn't afraid. I should have been very afraid.
Because you're fearless.
No, I'm really not. No, I'm frightened of everything. I can't even swim. No. I'm frightened to order Uber Eats, but I'm not afraid to work at the COVID lab. Anyway, but what I love about the rack, right, is and this ties into Bina. Weirdly, maybe the COVID lab relates more to Bina than anything I'm going to write. I look at those tubes and I look at those people, and there's a lot of long-term care that just breaks my heart. My heart's already pretty freaking mashed, but the tiny little piece of tile in the corner that's left. Is I just think about the narratives. I think, oh God, the person that came to the tent to get this nasopharyngeal swab, and the nurse that was working in the cold, but mostly the long-term care. I just it makes me so sad. And but then I get happy because I go, oh look, people are getting tested. But I think about the narratives. I mean, really, it's the identical narrative. Person approaches the tent. But, for the novelist, it's never the identical narrative.
No,
and you
really
get to
isn't.
learn all these interesting names because you see what the people in your province are called, and they just have marvelous names.
You can't make that stuff up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot of wonderful questions already from readers. It might be time to open this up to others besides me. So one question from an anonymous person, is that okay to, well, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead.
Yeah,
and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
If it's a good question, I thought they can be anonymous.
Okay,
I'm sorry if I owe you money, anonymous.
Anonymous is not concerned with that. Anonymous starts out by saying, I love this book, so they're happy to be here. Can you talk about the other authors and books you are reading and engaging with while coming up with such a dazzling form?
Oh, wow. Oh, this is such a beautiful question. Now, it might disappoint a little bit, but after I wrote Martin John, I discovered the work of Thomas Bernhardt. I had never read Thomas Bernhardt. I mean, most of the times when I see in reviews books and writers that I'm compared to, or not compared to, but might be invoked, because I'm certainly not on a comparable level with most of the people that they do compare me to, but I'm often confused. Like somebody mentioned a novel, I was like, I've never read that novel. And it's so funny because at the beginning of the novel, I put two, I want to call them
epigraphs. Yeah, I want to ask you about those. They're so interesting. There's a Clarice Lispector and
and Luisa Valenzuela, who's a wonderful Argentinian writer. So I'm always surprised that nobody goes, well, what about these? What about this Brazilian or these Argentinian writers? But actually, Thomas Bernhardt fascinated me. I read like one or two of his books. And they were I just loved this grumpy man saying, the kitchen curtains in Austria are the worst kitchen curtains in the world because this nation does not know how to stitch a curtain. And I thought, oh, I like these, so I think maybe that it was a little bit of an influence, but I haven't read a lot of Thomas Bernhardt. The main two things that I repeatedly went to were Francis Bacon's paintings. There's an eerie solitude and isolation and loneliness. Like there's like a broken something in those paintings, and I wanted to try to find that on the page. Like I don't want to write about Francis Bacon necessarily, but there's just a quality in those paintings, and I would sort of stare at them and. I mean, it's Francis Bacon. So if you stare at them for too long and you've got middle-aged eyesight, not recommended. I mean, unless you've got ketamine with you or something, which I don't have, so don't get in touch. I wish I did. And if you've got it, please do get in touch. And the other thing was these beautiful, I really love music. I'm not musical. I'm horrible at music, but that's why there are lots of great people at music. But there's an Irish guy, Clifton O'Rahala, and he's in the gloaming, but he does these other soundscapes, and he has this violin with 6 strings. And I got this, I just was obsessed watching this series that it was actually like a film that he did, and it was these amazing, beautiful soundscapes. And there were certain notes, they were almost, I call them drone notes, but I don't know if they really are called drone notes, but you kind of have them with the pipes, with the uilleann pipes, and we have them on the concertina. And so there was a part of me that wanted to have a note throughout that drew through the book that didn't necessarily go anywhere, but that just like it's a sound. And that is, I think, maybe where that third, that choral voice comes from, because that comes up a lot in my books, especially since Martin John. I find myself, and I think it's the Greeks, I think it's like the Greek chorus. I'm not answering the bloody question again, but it's not uninteresting. And so that, and then there were 2 other things. So sorry for the person, anonymous, I'm really sorry, because this isn't going to answer his or her or their question, but
it is a whole synesthesia dimension.
The other thing that I was also fixated on was there's this old religious program called the Ryark in Ireland. And I would look up, there aren't that many clips of it, but I was really fixated on the way there used to be this priest, and he had a microphone with a lead, and he would stand and he would say, and there was this one clip that I saw, and it was market day in Ballinasloe, and he's standing there and he's got this microphone and he says, and the place, I'm not quoting it, so don't get in touch if I do it wrong, something like, and unless the place, unless you have ketamine, in which case be on the phone all day long. He says, and the place is hopping or steaming, and then the camera, when you look at the scene, it's like there's two women picking through, like it's not, I realized listening to him and looking at him, that when I looked at it and I heard him tell me that, I could see things that weren't there. Like there was nothing particularly hopping about the scene. And I realized that old, like that almost like early televisual era or the radio, you had to build these pictures, right? And so I was really interested as well in the way that they would narrate wildlife documentaries. So I would imagine like Bina, like thinking or talking about herself like she was like a gazelle or giraffe, like, or, you know, I don't know. So those are some of the influences. In terms of writers, yeah, I really do love, oh God, there's just so many of them. And then I won't remember, like, there's so many of them, but a lot of them are published by the New York Review of Books, to be honest. I mean, you could literally start at the beginning of their catalog and just keep going, you know? So I don't know if that offers any, I mean, multidisciplinary, you know, or is it multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, like music, painting, dance? I love to look at dance. I'm probably very strange. Lately it's birds. I'm obsessed with birds, you know, which I really recommend all novelists to get into birds. Yeah. Okay,
well, thank you. Okay. Another anonymous question. Listening to Anakana is such a treat. Your work has such propulsion and movement that seems to come from the language itself rather than plot. How do you approach achieving this narrative momentum?
Gosh, well, I'm really failing to achieve it at the moment with the present book I'm writing. So note to anonymous, I may never achieve it again. This could be it. How do I don't know. I'm
actually going to read the next question because I think it's related.
Sure.
This is from Jeremy Fisher. At what point do you feel like a passage is finished? Your work feels so punched up. It's exhilarating to read someone whose writing is so relentless. That feels sort of related to the momentum.
You're a community bookstore. You're making me day here. Well, I just want to give a shout out to my Canadian editor, Lynn Henry, who may well be listening, hopefully while she's washing dishes, because poor Lynn Henry, I actually read every line in this book aloud to my editor. And I really, really, really am grateful to Lynn Henry because she was willing to find a way to work with me that was different from, you know, maybe the usual way. And I'd like to point out that nobody should try this with their editor.
Wait, did you read it all at once, or do you just mean that in the course of editing, she ended up hearing it all?
No, I went and sat in a room and read it aloud for 3 days with her.
Wow. That's amazing.
And it was so helpful because I can hear when it's off. And then when I was stuck, she could help me. And I would just, and so that made the editorial process like less anguished, although I'm sure it was horrendous for her, but she's, as anybody who works with her knows, she's got the patience of Job. She's incredible. But it was more about that when, I don't know why I, had to do that, but that was the way that worked. And then the previous 2 books, I had a very similar experience, but I didn't make anybody else suffer that one in the same way. And I would sort of beat it aloud on the table. And I have a very hard time. So the first 86 pages usually, I spent a long time, and I think maybe that's how I get into it. I don't know. But one of the people that does this very well is Cesar Aira, the Argentinian surrealist. I mean, if you look at his books, and he's written like, I don't know, 156 of them, he actually creates propulsion in in a different way. I've never really figured out exactly how he does it, but you know, there are many
brain hacking. Yeah, there's some.
Yeah, there are many examples. I mean, just the very notion of plot, well, propulsion is important actually, but I think that Jeremy Fisher and Anonymous are onto something that I'm really convinced. Like language is the means. Like it's problematic for me, or I struggle with like novels that sort of read like Netflix shows or something.
Mm-hmm.
Now everybody else seems to be fine with it, and obviously they're selling lots of copies and people want to publish them, so don't mind me. I'll just be over here in the corner, you know, with my $1 laundry basket. But I wonder about this, and it brings me back to, I don't know if you remember this Robert Louis Stevenson quote where he talked about the optics, and he talked about, and I wish I could remember the bloody quote, but it was like, it was to do with the shift between the visual and the auditory. Now, of course, I can't remember it, but I will look it up. And I will put it in the comments of this event if it ever gets put anywhere. And also, if you think about Leskoff, right? That Leskoff, and you remember that Walter Benjamin essay about the shift from the oral to the print. Do you remember that essay? It's
the scars, yeah.
Yeah. And I was always kind of interested in that. Like, okay, so I mean, I think that obviously new forms are constantly forming, and there's, you know, room for all sorts of books and all sorts of literature. And let's, you know, I'm mindful of that. I'm definitely not being disingenuous to any other way that any writer writes their books. I think it's definitely don't write books like I write books. Good God. Don't recommend it at all. And if there was a way that I could write maybe books that weren't like these books, it would probably be very sensible to do it, but it's working out good today. It's working out fine today.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this quote from Raymond Chandler, who one thinks of as being kind of a plot writer, and he was talking about an editor who cut out some line that he wrote about a sunset, and he was like, I just put that in later because people think that they read my books for plot, but I'm a stylist and the plot is all a red herring. And it's true that it must be working for some people, but I think that there must be a sense in which sometimes we think we're reading for plot and we're actually not. Although then there's a lot of those books that, yeah.
Yes, but I think you're onto something. And I think that maybe, you know, maybe we could like shake up those terms a bit, or I don't know, innovate with some of these terms that maybe, I mean, I don't know. I keep going on about innovation every day. I wake up and think about this bloody pandemic and I think, we've got to innovate. And, you know, it's been a year and I haven't come up with a single innovative solution except buying this fern, you know? So I don't know. I just don't have any clear, I don't know, but I mean, isn't that the great thing about art? Isn't that the great thing about literature is aren't we interested in like what the novel can become? Like, yes. It's not sorry, like it's not that there's like, we know what it's, yeah, my boyfriend's getting a bit, stop being aggro towards you, okay? I'm sorry, I have to like lunging towards you there. Like I'm curious about that. Like, what can the novel be?
When people say, oh, the novel is done, or is the time for the novel done, or is the novel relevant? It's like, why aren't they talking about the novel changing, which it has to do and is doing?
Yeah, or just and it's really odd that there's a lot of bloody people who want to write novels for such a dead thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean,
you could argue that ping pong's dead. You know, you don't see ping pong because people have like no space anymore because housing has been astronomical. You could argue that. I would argue, and I would like to do a shout out for ping pong. Do you know the story about Marjorie of Kemp? Who's the person whose manuscript fell out of the wall because the people were playing ping pong and they went in the ping pong ball went in the cupboard, and then the manuscript, it was Marjorie of Kemp. Her manuscript fell out of the wall because of ping pong.
Wow. I that's great. Thank you for that prop for ping pong. There are a lot of reader questions appeared while I wasn't noticing it, and now I feel that we're behind. But I think that we can consolidate two of these, which is an anonymous and Ishrat Syed, who are both asking. One is Anonymous wants to know, do you miss Bina writing in her voice? And Ishrat wants to know, is this the end for Bina, or will she reappear in your other work?
Oh God, these are such great questions. And of course,
and there's another sort of related question. Are those Post-its behind you the beginnings of a new work? That question's from Karen.
Yeah, shall I start with the Post-its? I mean, yeah, I'll start with the Post-its just because I was a bit nervous somebody might zoom in on them. And if they do, they're gonna hear the following. Okay, hypothetical planets, unexplained spontaneous orgasms, hostile and bitter librarians, Saint Sister Teresa of Avila, visible mending, things to do barefoot. Great moments in the history of social rejection. That's what the Post-its read.
Oh, I love that constellation.
Yeah. And all I can say to the person that asked that, who might be anonymous, is it's not going well. Pray for me. Pray for these Post-its. Okay, the other question, do I miss Bina? Yeah, I kind of mostly miss her if I think she's being disregarded. I get a little protective of her. You know what I mean? Like, because I suppose, this book has been in the world now for a few years, and, I'm very blessed that people have embraced and engaged with my book, but, there's still a curious reaction to, an old woman might have something to say and might have feelings about something that I'm sometimes surprised by, because I mean, I am technically an old woman. I'm going to be an older woman. I'm going to be 50 soon, and my genes aren't great, and we don't last that long in my family. So I might actually, this could be 50, could be my 70. And I feel like, well, why did we imagine that old women didn't have things to say, or old women weren't upset about things? I don't know, but I'm sure I'm taking it far too personally, and that's not what people mean at all. Just occasionally, there's a lot of, I mean, we've had like thousands of years of Thomas Bernard's had a lot of cranky men. So I'd like about 200 years now of cranky women, and they're not even, I don't find they're cranky, maybe because I'm cranky. And then the other question was, that's a great question. Was it Syed who asked that question?
That was his surname. Will she reappear in your other work? Ishrat Syed. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly.
Thank you for the question, Ishrat. Okay, originally it was a quartet, and there were 4 books, and it was actually Eddie was the character that was coming over, but I've actually decided to do 3. I think I'm going to do another triptych, and I want these 3 books to be about buildings, but I don't know. That's all.
Wow, the bricks are making a surprise entrance.
The bricks. But I'm, like I say, it's really, I mean, anybody who has the misfortune to be in my kind of friendship group or in charge of my medical care knows that it's a lot of it's not easy. And as any writer who might be attending this knows, writing books is hard. And I was just remembering today, like the number of people whose ears I burned a hole in about this book. And inevitably, if you publish more than one book, your various publishers and editors get used to you despairing. I just find it really hard to write books. And I don't know, I'm really hoping they're going to sell something on the internet soon that makes it easier. I don't know what, but I'll buy it.
Here. Let me know.
Hey, maybe
we'll keep each other in the loop.
We can split it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We'll share passwords. We're a little over time, but I'm happy to go sort of run through a couple more reader questions.
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
Do they knock you off here? Does Zoom shut you down? Do they
I think Community Bookstore has to knock us off, and the vibe that I was getting was that they're not going to do it unless we go on for hours.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Well, let's keep going. Oh no,
okay.
we've been okay.
All right. This I think is an interesting question from a, okay, now we're going to do the sort of masculinity themed questions. One is from Jack Spencer. This has been described as a feminist novel. Is it possible for a man to develop understanding and empathy from it? And then we have an anonymous question, which is, can you talk to the care and love toward the uncle who stands in stark contrast to his nephew?
That's lovely. Yeah,
that is lovely. Maybe let's stop there and not bunch too many questions together.
The answer to the first question is yes, but I mean, I really do choose to believe that, you know, that.
And thank you to everyone who has to leave early. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, they're all going home. Yeah.
Some people are going home, but there's still 86 people here. So.
Well, thank you. God, 86 people. Oh my God. You know, it's amazing. Thank you, 86 people. I hope this wasn't a clerical error, clicking on this link. No, I mean, I choose to believe. Listen, I have to say, some of my greatest readers are fellas. There's no question. I've had amazing engagement from, I mean, I've written 3 books now, and, you know, and I learn a lot about my books from my readers, some of them. Some of them basically just say, stop writing books, just stop it, right? And that's insightful too. But I'm not going to stop unless they pay me to stop. If they pay me to stop, no problem.
Yeah, then there's a conversation. If not, then they should stop.
I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I mean, Bina even says in the book, doesn't she say all humans are awful? They're awful, awful, awful. Stick to cats. You see how well I know this book. It's been 3 years since I published it or whatever, but stick to cats or carp, you know, women are no better, or I can't remember. Yes, is my answer to that. Yes, they can. Yes, they do. And I choose to believe, I mean, I have lots of male friends and lots of men who I know are incredibly smart, and yeah, just keep going. Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is also the human condition. You know what I mean? Like, and the lovely question about the uncle. So that is Tomas. So in the novel, so Eddie, now I have to do the pie chart, I have to do the flow chart here. So Eddie is the son of the brother of the neighbor, which actually is not unusual in rural Ireland. And I want to point out that the taking in of people into your home is also not unusual. And the adult child living in the back bedroom is also not unusual. And in some cases, it speaks to the dreadful crisis in mental health care that often people are being housed in family circumstances. There's also an awful lot of elder abuse. That's just not geographic, right? And I was fascinated by that. There are court cases of I remember this one court case where the judge ruled that the woman was entitled to have a washing line in her back garden. And then there was this standoff with her son who, and I just remember seeing that judge rules woman can have washing line. You know, I'm not making it up. And so, yeah, I'm so glad somebody asked that question. So that part of the narrative is that there's one character. Well, why don't I try to read that part actually, unless community books are going to shut me down. So it's Tomas stayed with me the way more than the others, and it's this moment where she helps this man, and they have this lovely shared moment where he asks her, do you think people like us, it's to do with children, having children, because he doesn't have any children and Bina doesn't have any children, and he says, you know, do you think, I can't actually remember, I'm so sorry, even though I wrote this book I can't remember what I wrote, but what was the question? I'm sorry.
The care and love toward the uncle in stark contrast to his nephew.
Yeah. You know, this is why I love readers and I love reading, because of course, you know, now I'll have to go off and contemplate that for 4 days. I wanted the tenderness, like I wanted to have tenderness in it. And I felt that was very tender, the way that, you know, he asked her to help him, and there's a lot of kind of tender stuff, and also the manipulation of tenderness, because Bina says to Phil, well, you've got your faith, right? Later in the book, Bina says to Phil, when Phil is trying to persuade her to help her end her life, she says, but you've got your faith. And then Phil says, oh, I don't have any faith at all. I just said that to stop people visiting. So, it's, and the other thing is that, obviously before the pandemic, and please God, at the end of after the pandemic, people are in and out of each other's lives, and especially in rural places. And so, yeah, I'm not very, very coherent about this, but I know exactly what that person is describing. So I'm just sitting here feeling it, which is no use.
This actually ties into another anonymous question, which maybe we can do this as a wrap up. It's sort of a long question, but just to summarize, or just to read the end, I'm wondering what you've said about connecting to people. Any thoughts on the difference between influence to write by a work of art and influenced by a person and wanting to connect to them by writing? I thought that's a very interesting question.
Could you repeat the question?
Can I read the whole thing? It's very long.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking of something I heard.
Oh, maybe I read it.
Oh,
all I do is click. Where is it?
It's on QA.
Where is it?
And then you can see the last question, which I'm not asking you, but you can answer it if you want.
Oh, QA.
Yeah. So we're at the last two.
Oh, Mr. Spontaneous Orgasms. Listen, mister, there's a lot of places on the internet with that kind of information.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, this is like, we're decent living people here. Okay, where's the question?
It's the second to last one. I'm thinking of something I heard. I don't know who that is.
Suleiman. Oh, I must look this person up. To be able to understand someone, or scholarship, to be able to understand someone in living relationship. But it was so moving to hear that and be reminded of the sort of motivation for effort. I hear a lot of what you're saying about writing to engage ideas, but I'm wondering about what you've said about connecting to people. Any thoughts on the difference between influenced to write by a work of art and influenced by a person and wanted to connect to them by writing?
I've been thinking about this a lot because I'm trying to write about someone who's simultaneously reading books and in all of these interpersonal relationships, and how do you just switch between those modes? And then in general, when you write, sometimes you're responding to things that you read, and sometimes you're responding to your actual life, and there's some interplay between them, because otherwise the works of art wouldn't mean anything if they didn't resonate for you somehow. Is that a kind of like triage?
Yeah, I mean, I think of your work, especially your earlier book, right? The first book, which is it the first book? God,
it is the first book, yeah.
About your relationship with Russian literature. I mean, to me, that's an innovative new form. I loved it.
Thank you.
I love that book. I mean, you're so funny, and it takes you in. I love the idea of people writing about reading. I think it's fantastic. Much more so maybe than, writing about not having a boyfriend or whatever. I'd rather lots more people wrote about the act of reading.
I mean, they're not at all mutually exclusive.
That's true. You could also, that's true, but they do seem to be heavy. There's a lot more heavily weight. It has been. It seems to be changing now. I mean, okay. I mean, I have to just be mindful of not insulting anybody or anything. I mean, this is just my relationship to it. I think that it's very valid. I think that when I'm thinking about fiction, and perhaps this limitation is mine, I'm not an auto-fiction writer. I don't write auto-fictitiously, because if I did, I'd be in a prison cell right now. And, because obviously Martin John is not auto-fictive. So for me, I'm more interested in the realm of the imagination, obviously, but within the realm of the imagination, there's humanity, people's humanity, and how can literature, how can language also capture or create sort of a sense of humanity? And I don't know if I succeed or fail at that, but so I think that I understand. but I'm not somebody who writes like auto fiction, even though I don't think that actually has got anything to do with the question. I'm convinced to some extent that, you know, we do need innovative new forms in the personal essay, and maybe innovative new forms in the personal novel. I'm not particularly, I see those things as distinct, but I love works. I mean, my feeling about it is it just comes down to, a lot of it just comes down to the prose for me. I basically read anything. I mean, I read tractor manuals, I read anything that interests me. But language is the main thing for me. I'm interested in language. And so it doesn't really matter as long as
it's
it's
a person or a work of art.
Yeah, it's more, if something's like interesting with language, and, you know, being sparse with language is still working with language. I'm not talking about, you know, floral, lyrical, purple prose. Yeah, so I don't think I'm actually quite smart enough to answer that question. And I mean, I'm actually not being like self-depreciating. I'm just being honest. Maybe it's just not my realm, or maybe I'm just a limited writer. You know, in that way. I guess
this is really interesting. It sounds like it's just not a distinction that you draw between what influence that you got from Thomas Bernhardt's guy yelling at the curtains versus some actual people who you met versus, you know.
Do you know, I'm remembering that in my first novel, Malarkey, weirdly, I did make up buildings and stuff. You know, I've this kind of tension with the idea of fiction being bloody Google Map, or fiction being, you know, I really worry about this notion of truth and verification. And I really, really object to this. I'm like, something is not more valuable because it's verifiable. Like, and I think that is where like memoir and fiction, and really fiction, I mean, memoir kind of breaches the levees of fiction sometimes. And so I think something's going to happen. I don't know what, but some sort of new planet or something's going to form with this. And we see it. I mean, there's a writer who's publishing a book in North America, Duran Nigrifa, Ghost in the Throat is the name of the book. And it merges translation and nonfiction and autofiction, and I've been thinking a lot about that book. And, you know, we have to innovate with the language, we need to innovate with language around this work. We need to find new ways to describe it. And I guess we need to just kind of catch up to that. But isn't that the brilliant thing about literature? Like, there are some writers that are like 40 years ahead of literature, and I'll say her right here and now, Talia Field is one of them. I mean, I look at what that woman's doing and it's amazing. And I just think, so we have to kind of, but that's maybe this person whose name I can't see because I closed it. Anonymous, you know, maybe they can articulate much better on it. I think it's a lovely thing to think about.
I think so too. And I think your call to the future was very inspirational, and the many kind words have come to you from the QA, and I think it's probably time to wrap up.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm the least fun thing about this. That was the funniest event that we've ever done. Thank you, Anakana and Elif. The Post-it notes, you have to write the book. If you don't write the book, I don't know.
Well, the book is in progress. I'm just, you know, I'll just keep coming to Community Bookstore to try to like get some courage. Well, you know what, Kate, I'd like to thank Katie Waldman today for giving me like a nice injection of courage there. Yeah, and all the people, and the Minneapolis Star Tribune last week. Oh my God, shout out to Minneapolis, you know.
And to the 76 participants who are still here. Thank you.
Oh my God, and the participants. And if any of you are in Minneapolis, please get in touch and tell me how I can get on sports radio or any radio in America, especially in Minneapolis. I want to be big in Minneapolis.
We're going to get you big in Minneapolis. We're going to work on it. Most importantly for everyone, I posted a link again to buy the book. Please do. If you don't, then you have no business being here. No, I'm kidding. Come to all of our events, but buy the book. Buy the book. Wow. Okay. That was really great. Thank you. Thank you, Owl. Thank you, Koala.
Oh, there's koala. Yeah, I'm owl. Yeah, it's true.
Well,
Yeah. Owl and koala.
A
And
great
beagle.
pleasure. And beagle.
And beagle.
Thank you so much.
No, this was absolutely delightful. Thank you so much for your time, both of you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
And we'll do it again. Bye.
Yeah, hopefully we
Next
can come in
time.
the shop next time.
That's right.
Yeah, and I can bring like tea bags or capes.
We'll
or
drink
something.
wine. We'll drink wine.
What do we do now? Do I say goodbye? Do I have to say goodbye to all the attendees?
Yeah.
Elizabeth McCracken, goodbye. Susan Barbara. Oh, that's my editor. Oh, there's Renee. Jane Ellison. Oh, hello.
Damien in Minneapolis.
Minneapolis. Really, where are those people down at the end? Oh, Damien. Hi, Minneapolis.
A wonderful translator.
Adrian, Emma Cleary. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Dolly Henderson. What a great name. Katie Dobbs, Emma Cleary, I already thanked her. Carla Gilders, Christina Williams, Dolly Henderson. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing here. I'm just reading the same people. Thank you. That was really great. Elif, thank you.
Thank you very much. This was so much fun.
So what happens now? Do we
I'm gonna hit a
We
button.
get ejected into the ether and we drink alone and ponder our death.
Okay,
that's
but can I still talk to Elif? No,
but
that's
you can set
it,
up your own
right?
Zoom.
It's over.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, there's still 60 people there. Kind of be really fun to do like horse horoscopes or something. You know, like what's her name did, that woman from the Situationist. Do you know that she used to write horse horoscopes? Oh, we're out, are we? Is it
No,
dead?
I'm just I'm letting this ride because it's so funny.
Yeah, do you
all
know
right.
that her? You know her though, the Situationists. You know, come on, what's her name? Somebody write it in the. Oh, I wrote about her. Michelle Bernstein. She wrote horse horoscopes. Yeah. Anyway, there probably aren't very many horses in Minneapolis or in New York. Yeah. All right. Well.
Good night. Be safe.
Good night. Take care.
Develop us a vaccine. Thank you.